Like, sometimes you just got to break up with yourself. Hello. Welcome back to Friend Crush. I'm Amber Akilla, and today I'm doing a video episode because I put makeup on. So for anyone that's listening to audio, I'm going to put the YouTube link in the description. And if you want to watch me, then you can click and do so. So today's topic is the much anticipated friendship breakups. When I asked about like making friends and finding friends, I got like a few responses. And then when I asked about friend breakups, I was like, damn, we're all just really going through it, aren't we? So I think this is going to be like 2 or 3 parts. Part 1 will be what precipitates a friendship breakup, what is the catalyst, what happens when we feel like we need to separate from a friend. And then part 2 will be how does that come to a head? Like, is it confrontation, ghosting? Somebody said that they had a drink thrown at them in the club. Other people have had things stolen from them, which is crazy. And then like verbal abuse occurs. And then either in that part or in part 3, it'll be what do we learn from friendship breakups? And is it possible to reconnect? Yeah. So obviously this is going to be mostly from like drawing from my experience, what I observe, and then I'm going to refer to things that people have submitted as well. Also, I want to make a distinction between a friendship drift and a friendship breakup, because I think sometimes you can feel like your friendship with someone isn't maybe as strong as it was before, but there aren't necessarily any like hard feelings. You can kind of respect each other's growth in like different directions, and then if you meet at a later date, you can always catch up and, you know, update each other on what you've been doing. Like, I have a lot of people that I, you know, met during university, and we probably spent a lot of time at uni together, but weren't necessarily like really close friends. And then after uni, we all just kind of went in different directions, but I'm always open to like being able to catch up with them and see what they've been up to. And, you know, there's no hard feelings that we haven't been like constantly keeping in touch, you know, because I do think as you get older, the amount of energy that you have to give to friends, or the number of people you can maintain friendships with, decreases as you're thrown into like the outside world. Like I said in the previous episode, in terms of like making friends, when you're at university or when you're in high school, the environment that you're in is so much more closed. So you're really like creating friendships out of proximity and circumstance. And then when you get older, you are more likely to find people based on like similar values and similar interests, or working in similar industry. And for me personally, I like being able to have friends from all different times in my life. You know, I think I'm really lucky to have people that I knew in high school that I'm still friends with, who knew me when I was like 13, 14, 15. And I'm also really grateful for the friends that I met post uni through work or just through mutual friends, whatever. And that's like a different type of connection, but all are cherished and important to me. So I think in your 20s, it's like the first period of really dramatic change and self-discovery and self-growth. For me, I think I always want to be open to personal change and development at any stage in life, but I think like my 20s has been the most aggressive period of that, in terms of like for me personally, and then also the circumstances that I'm in. Yeah, when you start to experience these sorts of changes, the differences between you and the people that you're friends with start to become more obvious, and not everybody is going to necessarily continue with you on whatever journey or whatever direction you go in. So I think friendship breakups are kind of usually comprised of like two parts. And the first part is the internal misalignment, whether that's within one person or with both people. So like one person is starting to undergo changes, or their values are becoming more clear to them and it no longer aligns with the other person, or both people start undergoing this aggressive change and it no longer works. The friendship isn't really like working the same way that it used to. And then this manifests in the second part, which is like the circumstances in which the friendship breakup is like initiated with. So, maybe I have met a friend through partying during university, and so much of our friendship is based on going out and getting drunk and whatever. And then, we finish uni and I become more health conscious and I don't want to party as much anymore because now I have a full-time job and I can't spend as much time out because then I don't have the energy to, like work, and I don't get enough sleep. But then maybe the other person is still in their party phase, and me not going out with them anymore starts to create friction because they feel like the friendship is changing in a way that makes them feel like less valued. And then the circumstances, so it's like the change in values between the two people, and then the circumstances that it comes up in is like me not going to parties anymore, or them taking it personally, and that starts to cause conflict. I think most of the time people focus more on like the circumstances in which the breakup happens and less about like the individuals involved and the changes that are occurring within them that means that maybe they're no longer compatible. Just because we can like talk about friendship breakups and accept that they're part of life, it also doesn't make them any easier, like, so if you do go through a friendship breakup, don't feel like you can't mourn the relationship, you can't feel sad. Even if somebody has kind of like done you wrong, I think it doesn't change the way that you feel, and being able to lean into that and process and figure out like what you've learnt about not just the other person but also yourself through this experience is going to help you move forward in a like healthier and productive way. Because if you get in the habit of like repressing negative experiences without processing them, then you're likely to fall into a pattern where you continue to attract the same sorts of dynamics. I feel like I've had situations where I've exited a toxic friendship, and without moving forward with the right amount of awareness, I've just walked straight into another friendship with the same sort of dynamic. So it's like the universe continues to give you the same lesson over and over again until you learn. So now, like as I've gotten older, and I've built more self-awareness and become more confident in who I am, who I want to be, it's much easier for me to know when something isn't working. When I was younger and I was still very lost and searching for something to connect to, and in an environment that was very insular, because Perth is so small and so isolated, you can really just feel like there is nowhere to go. Like if I was to exit the unhealthy friendships that I was in, it's like I had nowhere to go. Go to the desert, go hang out in the bush. So I just felt like I was cruising through and just waiting to leave. But now that I'm older, I feel, like my close circle has reduced down a lot because we have like healthier dynamics between friends, and we're able to, deal with our own shit instead of expecting each other to be responsible, which is something that has been the cause of previous friendship breakups. It's like, look, something's got to give or I've got to go, because we can't talk about the same problems over and over and over again if you're not doing anything to make your circumstances change. So let's look at some of the things that have caused friendship breakups from your submissions. She didn't believe I have depression. I was medicated and in therapy, and said I'm just lazy. Yeah, like I think that's something that I've struggled with a lot too, like my own mental health, because for a really long time I didn't even know that I was depressed because there wasn't enough conversation about mental health. But I just felt shit all the time, and I felt like this weight on me, and this it was like existing in a haze, and anytime I tried to explain it to other people, they would be really dismissive. And then when I was diagnosed, people not knowing how to talk about it caused me to feel really isolated and alone. So I think and in the same way that I don't really blame people for not being able to understand the struggle that I had when I was coming to terms with just my ethnic identity. People aren't given the tools to understand the intricacies of mental health. At least they weren't 5 years ago in the way they are now. So I don't blame them, but that's just the reality. After almost 4 years of friendship, I just realized we didn't click anymore. Didn't know what to talk about with her anymore. Kind of feels like as if we're strangers. Someone else said, couldn't handle my opinion and ghosted me. She was going off the rails and I was indulging her like a toddler, which made things worse. They started hanging out with my bully behind my back after I told them not to. And when I brought it up, they lied to me. So I said, we're done. Guess who got betrayed a year later? Said ex-friend and my old bully. Karma is funny. Very toxic relationship. She was gaslighting me on many levels. A group of 3 and the ex-friend kept getting jealous and annoyed at me, so she turned. Yeah, since my friend moved back home, he hates everything I do and I didn't like it. And we would have fights and then make up and it got much worse. She tried to manipulate the entire friend circle, turning people against each other, guilt-tripping, etc. Verbally abused over a mindless mistake, then left early for my flight and never spoke again. She wasn't present when we hung out, treated me like a backup, was always late. Texted her calmly about it and she apologized, but ultimately nothing changed, so I distanced. They were taking advantage of my help with their academics, so schooling work, and for the following year I wouldn't do much for her. They took it as a sign that I hated them and distanced themselves and talked shit about me. I think everyone has a different threshold in terms of their ability to deal with negative emotions and situations, and it can be really disappointing when you're going through something heavy and someone that you would consider a friend isn't really able to support you. In my experience, you just can't really take it too personally, because sometimes your negative experience triggers their fear of that for them. So if you're dealing with a death in your family and your friend isn't able to be there for you, it's probably because they themselves don't know how to come to terms with death in their family. And then it triggers that in them, and their inability to confront that means that they can't really support you. So you need to kind of decide the type of people that you want around you. You can maybe accept them as a acquaintance and just a friend and not a close friend, but yeah, that's a difficult thing to realize, people that you trust and who you would want to be there for aren't able to be there for you. That's tough love. I got some more comprehensive responses that I'll read out. So, a friend who lives far away became paranoid when I deleted Snapchat and didn't respond for weeks. She had all my other contacts, phone number, Instagram, Facebook. She wasn't bothered to text me and ask how I was. Communication watered down and faded away. I think that's always like really interesting how the ways that we communicate and like social media has affected relationships, because sometimes I've been in friendship breakups where the breakup is initiated through like an Instagram unfollow, or like one person wants to only communicate on one platform and the other person isn't really on that platform, and then the other person takes it personally, and then it comes to this whole thing. But I think that is more like a symptom of like an underlying misalignment, you know, like the two parts. It's not necessarily about how you use Facebook or Instagram or Snapchat. It's about how each other's idea of themselves and of the other person manifests in those platforms and the way that they communicate with each other. Because, yeah, even if it starts with an Instagram unfollow or a discussion about the way that you're communicating, something always comes up through that discussion that kind of shows you who that other person is or what you really care about, and you realize that your friendship probably isn't going to be able to function moving forward if the way that you are communicating is so different. I had two major friend breakups. One was a best friend from high school. She got a boyfriend who took up all her time, had zero time for her other friends. And when I finally caught up with her, I told her I had depression. Then she never checked up on me again. Sad. But yeah, like I said, some people just don't know how to deal with their own negative feelings, let alone their friends. And it's disappointing, and I think fair enough if you can't really connect with that person anymore, obviously, but not something that you should take personally, because I think it is easy to then blame yourself, like, oh, I have depression, so I'm the reason why the friendship isn't working. But it actually is the issue is much more complicated than that, you know, like you have depression, you need to be working on that yourself. You need to have friends that understand that and can be there for you. People can only meet you at the depth at which they meet themselves. Does that make sense? So like, if they've never confronted negative feelings that they have, which I think is just like a widespread problem in modern society, is this obsession with like moral goodness and everything being positive and happy, that people are afraid of things that are perceived bad or negative. And the more comfortable you are with those parts of yourself, and those sorts of feelings, I feel like the more equipped you are to be able to empathize with other people. And some people they're just not there yet, and it's a journey. So you can only hope that something comes up for them where they're able to experience that growth and change. But you can only lead a horse to water. You know, all of these cliches and adages are there for a reason, because they're true. And I think in so many ways we're connected, but also isolated from each other at the same time. So it's easy to think like nobody's going through what I'm going through, nobody understands, but it's just same shit, different day, you know? These problems would have existed hundreds of years ago in the Middle Ages, people getting ghosted, not getting their letters responded to, but imagine the lag time between snail mail and like Instagram DMs. At least now, the turnover time is much faster, just given the way that communication works. It's pretty obvious if someone isn't responding to you, because you know that everybody's on their phone anyway. But yeah, sorry, that was a tangent. Yeah, like up here, she was going off the rails and I was indulging her like a toddler, which made things worse. Like, one thing that's really interesting that I was looking at is like this phenomenon of the man child, and how modern society doesn't have like the same ritual practices that tribes used to have in terms of initiating men into adulthood, where they create like they sever the relationship between the mother and the son so that a boy becomes a man. And now we don't have this kind of like rite of passage, which means that men, but also I think this applies to a lot of people, like you go from being a child and relying on a parent to keep you in check, and then you're thrown into the real world. And if you haven't consciously found a way to create and cultivate your own sense of self, then you rely on other people to kind of do that for you. And I've had that happen a few times where the other person is like speaking and behaving in a way that expects me to make decisions for them, or as if I have some kind of ability to change their circumstances or save them from whatever dilemma they're going through. And that's not like a healthy dynamic to have in any friendship or relationship. And I've also seen that happen a lot with women in relationships with men, where they just end up like babysitting their boyfriend because the guy is just looking for someone to fulfill that like position of mother for them. But yeah, like I have learned the hard way that you can't change someone if they're not willing to change themselves. And a lot of people would rather talk about change than actually do the work. They're two very different things. And I used to take what people say at face value and just believe whatever they're telling me. But at the end of the day, you have to see what people are doing. You know, like how do your values manifest in your actions? It doesn't matter if you believe XYZ, if you behave ABC, you know? So don't necessarily take people at their word. Take them at the way that they treat you and the people around them. And if somebody is dismissive of your mental health, that's not good. But if you yourself like aren't addressing those issues within you, then that's also not so great. And sometimes you need the friendship breakup to initiate those things. The consequences of your own toxic behavior. Yeah, literally. Like sometimes you just got to break up with yourself. You have to break up with this current version of yourself and think, I need to step my pussy up and do better because this isn't working. And I've had to do that I have to do that like every week, I feel. No. The breakup is within you. You have to break up with your former self or your current self in order to grow and step forward. You know, sometimes you just find yourself in this like spiral and you keep doing the same shit and getting the same results and hoping that it's going to be different. But yeah, you can't do the same shit and feel shitty and hope that things will change. And you can't be in a toxic friendship and keep doing what you're doing and think that they're going to get better. So yeah, when you have this like misalignment, at the end of the day, you have to ask yourself, can I accept this person for how they are, who they are, or is like the way that they're behaving affecting me in a way that I can no longer tolerate or accept? And that's a really hard question to ask yourself. But at the same time, it's like, if you're in a healthy friendship, you don't ask yourself those sorts of questions, you know, because you mutually respect each other, support each other, and it's easy. Like something that is healthy is easy. But when you start getting those little pings inside of your brain, those little red flags, those little notification bells, of triggers, I think it's important to listen to them because, like I said before, when I was younger, I wasn't sure of myself, and I had so much self-doubt that I doubted those signals, and I thought, oh yeah, this person's making me feel really shit, but like maybe their intentions are good and it's just not coming across right. And they said that they were sorry and they're doing it again, but like maybe I'm just being too sensitive. But it's like, I feel shit, okay? And a lot of it has to do with the way that I'm engaging with this person. And, maybe the circumstances aren't going to change. So I either accept them for how it is, or it's just something that I can't, something that is no longer healthy, and I just got to go, so definitely listen to your intuition. You can definitely have conversations. I think it's important to try to have conversations with people where possible. So I would like doubt myself, and it would just drag out, and I would just continuously feel shit, not be able to confront the other person about it. Or if I did confront them about it, they would take it really personally and get really defensive, and nothing would change, and it would just get awkward. And sometimes it's just like you're just not compatible with someone anymore, because it is really important to have boundaries. I think close friendships should be mutual, in the sense that if I'm going through a hard time, you're able to support me. If you're going through a hard time, I'm able to give you the support that you need. And if it's imbalanced, then what are you doing? That's not really like how close friendships should be. And I think at different times in your life, you are going to need different types of people around you sometimes. So I think when those inner values change and you're unable to sort of accept and acknowledge that within each other, and the incompatibility starts to jump out, then the circumstances arise for a friendship breakup to occur. And yeah, if you can't agree to disagree and still love each other and be friends, then you have to release each other with love and keep it moving. It's really important to learn and know who you are, instead of allowing other people to make you feel like you should be making their existence more comfortable at your own expense. That kind of dynamic is not cute at all, and I have absolutely no time or space for that. And I think as you get older, you do need to take those chances in stepping into yourself and letting go of people who kind of hinder your ability to do that. Because the more that you step into yourself, the easier it is for you to have boundaries and to not be in those sorts of situations again. But yeah, friendship breakups are hard. If you've been through a friendship breakup, if you're going through one and you're still like struggling to come to terms with it, just know that you're not alone. It's a universal experience that, people that you connect with, you can grow apart from. And I think as long as you can acknowledge and accept the role that you played and appreciate the friendship for what it was, learn something from the breakdown of this relationship about yourself, about other people, so that you are just a little bit wiser and self-aware in your other friendships and relationships, in any future friendships and relationships, then that is what is most important. And yeah, we'll talk about the breakdown of the friendship in terms of, does it come to conflict and confrontation, or is it like ghosting, and then how do we process and deal with it? Is it possible for reconciliation? We'll talk about that in future episodes, but thank you for tuning in, and stay hydrated, look after yourself, tell your friends you love them, and I'll speak to you soon. Mwah.